The standard blood sugar targets you have been told to aim for might actually be dangerous for your age. For decades, we have treated a 65-year-old body the same way we treat a 30-year-old body, forcing strict numbers that can lead to dizziness, confusion, and catastrophic falls. I'm Dr. Ben Harris, and today I am going to reveal why modern geriatric medicine is shifting its view on what constitutes a healthy reading for older adults, and exactly how you can stabilize your glucose without risking the dangerous lows that are often worse than the highs. There is a specific misunderstanding about the order in which you address your numbers that causes most of the frustration. Most people try to force the number down with medication or severe dieting first, but they miss the foundational step that makes the biggest difference. I will explain why the sequence of your actions matters more than the severity of your diet later in this video, but first, we need to correct the most common misconception about your target range. The first step is to understand and accept age-adjusted ranges. This is often the hardest mental shift for my patients to make because they have spent 20 or 30 years being told that a specific number is the gold standard of health. We have been conditioned to believe that lower is always better. However, as we age, the physiology of our bodies changes. Our reaction times slow down, our blood vessels become a little less compliant, and our sensitivity to insulin shifts. When you try to force an older body into the strict blood sugar ranges designed for a young adult, you often run the risk of hypoglycemia, which is when your blood sugar drops too low. For a senior, a low blood sugar event is statistically more dangerous than a slightly elevated reading. A low event can cause immediate fainting, a fall that breaks a hip, or heart arrhythmias. Let me tell you about Arthur to illustrate this perfectly. Arthur was 72 years old when he came to see me. He was a disciplined man, a retired engineer who liked precision. He had been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in his 50s, and for years he had aimed for a fasting blood sugar of 85. He was incredibly strict with himself. If he saw a reading of 105, he would skip a meal or double his exercise. The problem was that Arthur was feeling terrible. He described spells where he would feel shaky, sweaty, and incredibly anxious, usually around mid-morning. He thought these were symptoms of his blood sugar being too high, so he would restrict himself even further. One morning, he tried to stand up from his garden bench, got dizzy, and fell into his rose bushes. Fortunately, he only suffered scratches, but it terrified him. When we looked at his logs, Arthur wasn't suffering from high blood sugar. He was suffering from low blood sugar. His body, at 72, needed a slightly higher baseline to function safely and to keep his brain fueled. His strict adherence to a perfect number of 85 meant that any minor dip sent him into the danger zone. We adjusted his target. We told him that a fasting reading between 100 and 110 was perfectly acceptable for his age and health profile. We focused on stability rather than forced lowness. The change in Arthur was almost immediate. The spells disappeared. His energy returned. He stopped feeling anxious about every bite of food. He realized that chasing a number on a chart was hurting him, while listening to what was safe for his age bracket gave him his life back. This does not mean we ignore high blood sugar. It simply means we prioritize safety. For many older adults, a slightly relaxed target prevents the roller coaster of highs and lows. It provides a safety buffer. If your sugar is 110 and you take a walk and it drops 20 points, you are still at a safe 90. If you start at 80 and drop 20 points, you are at 60, which is an emergency. This approach requires you to have a conversation with your own doctor about what is safe for you personally, but understanding that perfect looks different after 60 is the key to mental peace and physical safety. Please take a moment to comment your age and your usual top number range below. It helps us see the variety of experiences in our community. Here is another simple habit that changes how your body processes sugar without changing what you eat. 2. Use the first bite rule, also known as strategic meal ordering. This is perhaps the most powerful tool for anyone who does not want to completely overhaul their diet, but needs better results. Usually, when we sit down to eat, we eat based on what looks most appetizing or what is hot. We might grab a dinner roll first or start with the mashed potatoes. When you eat carbohydrates like bread, rice, potatoes, or pasta on an empty stomach, they are digested incredibly fast. There is nothing to slow them down. They turn into glucose and rush into your bloodstream like a high-speed train. This causes a rapid spike in blood sugar. Your body then rushes to produce insulin to bring it down, which can lead to a crash later. This spike and crash cycle is exhausting for your body and damaging to your blood vessels. The first bite rule changes this dynamic completely. The rule is simple: eat your fiber and protein first. Save the carbohydrates for last. Think of your stomach like a waiting room. If the carbohydrates get into the waiting room first, they rush through the door into your blood. But if you fill the waiting room with fiber from vegetables and protein from meat, eggs, or beans first, the carbohydrates have to wait in line. They get digested much slower. They enter your bloodstream as a slow trickle rather than a flood. Let me share the story of Clara, who was 68. Clara was a wonderful cook and loved her breakfast. She had a ritual. Every morning she would have 2 pieces of toast with jam, and then she would have her scrambled eggs. She loved the toast while it was warm and crispy. Despite taking her medication, her mid-morning readings were always spiking. She felt tired and ready for a nap by 11 a.m., which she blamed on just getting older. When we discussed her routine, I didn't tell her to stop eating toast. I knew that would make her miserable. I simply told her to reverse the order. I asked Clara to eat her scrambled eggs and perhaps a few slices of cucumber or tomato first. I told her to let those settle for a minute or two, and then have her toast. Clara was skeptical. She didn't see how the same food could produce a different result just by changing the order, but she tried it. She ate her protein first, creating that buffer in her stomach. The results were astonishing to her. Her post-breakfast spike was cut nearly in half. Instead of shooting up and then crashing, her blood sugar rose gently and stayed stable. The mid-morning fatigue vanished. She wasn't tired because she wasn't crashing from a sugar spike. She was getting steady energy. Clara kept her toast. She kept her jam. She just changed the timeline. This is the difference between fighting your physiology and working with it. By coating the lining of your stomach with fiber and protein, you physically slow down the absorption of sugar. This is a strategy you can use at every meal. If you are having a sandwich, eat the filling, the meat and lettuce, of 1/2 first, or have a side salad before you take the first bite of the bread. If you are having steak and potatoes, eat the steak and the broccoli before you touch the potato. It is a small mental adjustment that requires zero restriction, but it pays huge dividends in how your blood sugar behaves for the next 2 hours. It is manageable, it is free, and it is safe for everyone. If you are enjoying these practical tips, please consider subscribing to the channel for more simple blood pressure and blood sugar advice. Now, let's look at a lever you can pull immediately after you finish that meal. 3. Engage in post-meal movement, or what I call the 10-minute lever. After you eat, glucose from your food begins to enter your bloodstream. This is the critical window. If you remain sedentary, sitting in a recliner, watching television, or reading a book, that glucose sits in your blood, waiting for insulin to come and knock on the doors of your cells to let it in. As we age, our cells become a little hard of hearing. They don't listen to insulin as well. This is called insulin resistance. So the pancreas has to pump out more and more insulin to get the job done. However, there is a back door to your cells that doesn't require nearly as much insulin. That back door is muscle contraction. When you use your muscles, they get hungry for fuel. They actively pull glucose out of the bloodstream to burn it for energy. The 10-minute lever is simply this. Within 30 minutes of finishing your largest meal, you commit to 10 minutes of light movement. This does not mean going to the gym. It does not mean sweating or getting out of breath. It just means moving your body so your large muscles, specifically in your legs, are contracting. George's story is a perfect example of this. George was 75 and lived a quiet life. His biggest meal was lunch. He would eat a hearty lunch and then immediately sit in his favorite armchair to watch the news. It was his routine for 20 years. George's blood sugar would stay elevated for hours after lunch. His doctor was considering increasing his medication, which George desperately wanted to avoid because of the side effects. We looked at his day. The period after lunch was his most sedentary time. I suggested the 10-minute rule. George had some arthritis in his knees, so he wasn't going to go for a brisk jog. Instead, he simply decided that after lunch he would clear the table, wash the dishes by hand, and then walk to the end of his driveway and back 2 times. That was it. It wasn't vigorous exercise. It was just movement. The first week he tried this, he noticed he felt less foggy in the afternoon. When he checked his numbers, he was shocked. His post-lunch readings had dropped by 20 points. By simply engaging his muscles when the glucose was hitting his bloodstream, he was using the fuel immediately rather than letting it pile up in his blood. He turned his muscles into a sponge that soaked up the excess sugar. George didn't have to change his lunch menu. He didn't have to take more pills. He just had to avoid the armchair for 10 extra minutes. You can do this in many ways. You can take a slow walk around your living room. You can do some light tidying up. You can step side to side while watching TV. The goal is just to keep the large muscles of the legs moving. This is especially important for seniors because our metabolism is naturally slower. We need to give our bodies a manual assist. Think of it as helping your body process the fuel you just gave it. If you have balance issues, please use a walker or hold onto a countertop. You do not need to walk far. You just need to be upright and moving. If you experience chest pain or severe shortness of breath, stop immediately. But for most people, this light activity is not only safe, it is therapeutic. It aids digestion and helps manage blood pressure as well. This simple habit breaks the pattern of the post-meal spike that damages nerves and blood vessels over time. It puts you in control. Here is another vital aspect of understanding your numbers that often causes unnecessary panic. 4. Understand reading context and timing to avoid false highs. One of the biggest sources of anxiety for my patients is the morning reading. You wake up, you haven't eaten anything for 8 or 10 hours, and you expect your number to be at its lowest, but you check it and it is high. Sometimes it is higher than it was when you went to bed. This causes panic. You think, I didn't eat anything. How can it be high? Is my diabetes getting worse? Did I eat the wrong thing for dinner? This anxiety spike releases cortisol, a stress hormone, which can actually drive your blood sugar up even further. What is often happening here is not a failure of your diet. It is a biological process called the dawn phenomenon. This is natural. In the early morning hours, usually between 4 a.m. and 8 a.m., your body prepares to wake you up. To give you the energy to get out of bed and start your day, your liver releases a surge of stored glucose into your bloodstream. It is like the body's natural cup of coffee. For a younger person, the body releases just enough insulin to handle this surge, so the blood sugar stays steady. But for older adults, or those with insulin resistance, that insulin response is a little slow. The liver dumps the sugar, but the insulin is late to the party. The result is a temporary high reading first thing in the morning. Margaret, who was 80, was dealing with exactly this. She was a lovely woman who was absolutely terrified of her morning numbers. She would see a 130 on her meter and it would ruin her whole day. She felt like she was failing. She would cut her breakfast in half, thinking she needed to make up for the high number, which then made her blood sugar crash later, leading to dizziness. I sat down with Margaret and explained the dawn phenomenon. I told her, Margaret, this isn't you eating the wrong thing. This is your liver trying to help you wake up. We changed her testing routine slightly. Instead of testing the second she opened her eyes, I asked her to get up, wash her face, have a glass of water, and move around for about 20 minutes before testing. This gave her body a little time to normalize. We also looked at the trend rather than the single number. We saw that by 10 a.m. her numbers were beautiful. The morning spike was just a temporary physiological wave, not a permanent state. Once Margaret understood this, the fear vanished. She stopped punishing herself by skipping breakfast. She realized that a 130 at 7 a.m. that drifts down to a 100 by 9 a.m. is very different from a number that stays high all day. Context is everything. You need to know why the number is what it is. Are you dehydrated? Did you sleep poorly? Are you in pain? All of these things raise blood sugar. Pain, specifically, is a huge factor for seniors. If you have arthritis and your knees are hurting, your body releases stress hormones. Those hormones tell your liver to release sugar. So, a high reading might not mean you ate too much cake, it might mean you are in pain. Treating the pain might lower the sugar better than insulin would. If you are just looking at the number without looking at the context, the time of day, your pain levels, your hydration, you are only seeing half the picture. You might be making decisions based on incomplete data. Always look for patterns over days and weeks, not just a single bad number. One high reading is a data point. It is not a verdict. This leads us to a crucial connection that many people overlook. You cannot fully manage your blood sugar if you are ignoring your blood pressure because the two systems are intimately linked. 5. Recognize the hidden link between your blood pressure and your blood sugar. This is the bridge that most specialists ignore because they treat the body as a collection of separate parts. You have a heart doctor for your blood pressure and an endocrinologist for your blood sugar, and rarely do they talk to each other. But in your body, these two systems are inextricably linked. You cannot have excellent blood sugar control if your blood pressure is uncontrolled, and here is why. Think of your blood vessels as the highway system of your body. Insulin is the delivery truck that carries sugar out of the blood and into the cells where it is needed. If you have high blood pressure, those highways, your arteries and capillaries, become stiff, narrowed, and damaged. When the roads are damaged, the delivery trucks cannot make their deliveries efficiently. The insulin cannot get to the muscle tissues easily. This means the sugar stays in the blood longer, giving you a higher reading, not because you ate too much cake, but because your circulation is compromised. Henry's story illustrates this connection perfectly. Henry was 67 and he was very diligent about his diet. He cut out sweets, he reduced his bread intake, and he was eating plenty of vegetables. Yet his blood sugar readings were creeping up, and his A1C, which measures the 3-month average of blood sugar, was not moving down. Henry was frustrated. He felt he was doing everything right and getting no reward. When he came to see me, we looked at his entire chart, not just his sugar logs. I noticed his blood pressure was consistently hovering around 145/90. It was untreated because he didn't feel it. We also looked at what he was eating. While he had cut out sugar, he was relying heavily on canned soups and processed deli meats for his healthy lunches. These foods are astronomical in sodium. The excess salt was stiffening his arteries and raising his blood pressure. This vascular stiffness was creating insulin resistance. We didn't change his carb intake because it was already low. Instead, we tackled the salt. We swapped the canned soup for homemade versions or low-sodium options. We swapped the deli meat for fresh roasted chicken. Within 3 weeks, his blood pressure dropped to 128/80. But the magic happened in his sugar logs. Without cutting a single additional gram of carbohydrate, his fasting blood sugar dropped 15 points. By relaxing his blood vessels, we opened up the highways. The insulin could finally do its job. For seniors, this is critical. If your blood sugar is stubborn, do not just look at the sugar bowl, look at the salt shaker. High blood pressure forces your pancreas to work overtime. By managing your pressure through lower sodium, stress management, and perhaps medication if your doctor prescribes it, you are directly helping your blood sugar control. This is a double win. You protect your heart and you stabilize your glucose in one move. Here is another physiological reality of aging that we need to counteract to create a safety buffer for your sugar levels. 6. Build glucose sinks with strength-friendly movement. As we age, we naturally lose muscle mass. This process is called sarcopenia. It starts in our 30s but accelerates rapidly after 60. This isn't just about looking frail or being unable to open a jar. It is a metabolic emergency. Your muscles are the largest storage tanks for sugar in your body. They are glucose sinks. When you eat and sugar enters your blood, your muscles are supposed to soak up a large portion of that sugar to store as energy for later. However, if you have lost significant muscle mass due to aging and inactivity, you have smaller tanks. You have nowhere to put the sugar. So, where does it go? It stays in your blood, causing high readings, or it gets stored as visceral fat around your belly. This belly fat then releases inflammatory chemicals that make your diabetes or prediabetes worse. The solution is not to become a bodybuilder. You do not need to lift heavy iron. You just need to stimulate the muscle tissue you have so it stays active and hungry for glucose. Evelyn was 71 and suffered from significant osteoarthritis in her knees and hips. Walking was painful for her, so she avoided it. Because she wasn't moving much, she had lost a lot of muscle tone in her legs. Her blood sugar was climbing, and she felt trapped. She thought, I can't exercise, so I can't fix this. I explained to Evelyn that she didn't need to walk miles to build a glucose sink. We started her on a seated strength routine. While sitting in her sturdy kitchen chair, she would simply straighten her leg out in front of her, hold it for a count of 3, and lower it slowly. She did this 10 times on each leg while watching TV. This engages the quadriceps, the large muscles in the front of the thigh. Then she would do wall push-ups. She would stand facing a wall, place her hands on it, and gently bend her elbows to bring her nose toward the wall, then push back. This engaged her chest and arms. She did this routine every other day. It took her about 12 minutes. Because she wasn't pounding her joints on the pavement, she had no pain, but those muscle contractions sent a signal to her body to keep the muscle tissue. Over 3 months, Evelyn regained strength. She could stand up from her chair without using her arms. More importantly, her post-meal blood sugar spikes flattened out. She had built a bigger tank for the sugar. Her muscles were waking up and doing their job again. For seniors, strength training is actually more important for blood sugar control than cardio. Cardio burns sugar while you are doing it, but muscle burns sugar 24 hours a day, even while you are sleeping. You can do this safely at home. Use a resistance band. Use water bottles as light weights, or just use your own body weight against gravity. Focus on the large muscle groups, the legs, the glutes, and the back. If you have a history of heart issues or recent surgery, check with your doctor first. But for most people, gentle resistance is the fountain of youth for your metabolism. It reverses the natural decline that makes blood sugar so hard to manage as we get older. This leads directly to a very common reason for fake high readings that has nothing to do with food or muscle. 7. Correct your hydration to prevent concentrated readings. This is simple physics, yet it is often overlooked. Your blood is a liquid. It is mostly water. The blood sugar reading you see on your meter is a measure of concentration. It tells you how much sugar is dissolved in a specific amount of blood, milligrams per deciliter. Think of a pot of soup on the stove. If you let it simmer for too long and the water evaporates, the soup becomes salty and thick. You didn't add more salt, you just lost the water. The concentration of salt went up. The same thing happens in your bloodstream. If you are dehydrated, the volume of water in your blood decreases. This makes the sugar that is there more concentrated. You might get a reading of 150 simply because you are dry, whereas if you were fully hydrated, that same amount of sugar would read as 120. Seniors are particularly prone to this for 2 reasons. First, our thirst mechanism fades as we age. You might not feel thirsty even when your body needs water. Second, many seniors restrict fluids because they are worried about incontinence or having to wake up at night to use the bathroom. Robert, a 69-year-old patient, came to me in July. It was a hot summer. He was panicking because his afternoon readings were suddenly 20 points higher than usual. He hadn't changed his diet. He was eating his usual salads and grilled fish. He was convinced his medication had stopped working. I asked him about his water intake. He admitted that because he was out gardening in the heat, he didn't want to keep running back inside to the bathroom, so he barely drank until dinner. I tested his hydration status, and he was significantly dehydrated. I told Robert, "Your sugar isn't higher, your blood is just thicker." We made a deal. He would drink a large glass of water first thing in the morning and another large glass 30 minutes before lunch. We also encouraged him to sip water while he was gardening. The next week, his numbers dropped back to his normal range. He hadn't changed a single bite of food. He just diluted the solution. Hydration also helps your kidneys. Your kidneys are the filter that removes excess sugar from your body through urine. If you are dehydrated, your kidneys cannot work efficiently to flush out that excess sugar. They stagnate. By drinking enough water, you are helping your kidneys flush the system. A good rule of thumb is to check the color of your urine. It should be a pale straw color. If it is dark yellow or amber, you are dehydrated, and your blood sugar readings are likely falsely elevated. Exceptions exist, of course. If you have heart failure or kidney disease and your doctor has put you on a fluid restriction, you must follow that limit. But for the vast majority of seniors, simply drinking 2 extra glasses of water a day can stabilize blood sugar readings and improve energy levels dramatically. Finally, we must address the invisible regulator of your blood sugar that operates while your eyes are closed. 8. Master the sleep sugar cycle. We often think of blood sugar as a result of what we do while we are awake, eating and moving. But about 1/3 of your life is spent sleeping, and this is when your hormonal reset happens. Poor sleep is a direct cause of high blood sugar. When you sleep poorly, if you have insomnia, sleep apnea, or just fragmented rest, your body perceives this as stress. In response to stress, your adrenal glands release cortisol. Cortisol is the enemy of insulin. It does 2 things. First, it tells your liver to dump stored sugar into the bloodstream because it thinks you are in danger and need energy to fight or flee. Second, it makes your cells resistant to insulin so they won't accept that sugar. So, you wake up after a bad night's sleep with high blood sugar, even if you ate a perfect dinner. Susan, 74, was a classic example. She was a night owl. She would stay up until 1 a.m. watching television, often dozing off on the couch, then waking up, moving to bed, and sleeping fitfully until 6 a.m. She was getting maybe 5 hours of poor quality sleep. Her fasting glucose was always stuck in the pre-diabetic range, despite her being very slim and active. She couldn't understand it. We discussed her sleep hygiene. I explained that by staying up late with the artificial light of the TV, she was suppressing her melatonin and keeping her cortisol levels high. Her body was in a state of low-grade chronic stress. Susan decided to make a change. She set a curfew for herself. TV off by 10 p.m. She started reading a book in bed instead. She aimed for 7 hours of time in bed. It took a few weeks for her body to adjust, but the results were undeniable. Her fasting morning numbers dropped by 12 points. She felt calmer. Her cravings for sugary snacks in the afternoon disappeared. When you are tired, your body screams for quick energy, which usually manifests as a craving for cookies or bread. By sleeping better, Susan regulated her hunger hormones, ghrelin and leptin, and her stress hormone, cortisol. If you snore loudly or gasp for air at night, please ask your doctor about sleep apnea. Treating sleep apnea is one of the most effective ways to lower blood sugar without medication. For everyone else, prioritizing a cool, dark room and a consistent bedtime is a powerful metabolic medicine. 9. Eliminate the liquid health mistake that causes invisible spikes. This is one of the most common traps I see in my practice, specifically with seniors who are trying to be health conscious. You grew up in an era where a glass of orange juice with breakfast was considered the pinnacle of a healthy start. You were told it was essential for vitamin C and immune health. However, when we look at the physiology of a body over 60, fruit juice, even 100% natural, no sugar added juice, acts almost exactly like soda in your bloodstream. When you eat a piece of whole fruit, like an orange or an apple, you are eating the fiber. The fiber is the brake that slows down the absorption of the sugar. It requires chewing, it takes up space in your stomach, and it moves slowly through your digestive system. When you drink juice, that fiber has been stripped away. You are essentially drinking naked sugar. Because there is no fiber to slow it down, that liquid sugar bypasses the waiting room of your stomach and floods your liver immediately. For a senior with even mild insulin resistance, this creates a massive, nearly vertical spike in blood sugar within 15 minutes of drinking it. Let me tell you about Eleanor. Eleanor was 78 and lived alone. She was incredibly proud of her independence and her health routine. Every morning she used a juicer to make fresh juice from 3 large oranges. She thought she was doing the absolute best thing for her body. However, Eleanor was struggling with fatigue in the early afternoons, and her doctor noted her triglycerides, a type of fat in the blood often linked to sugar, were climbing. Her blood sugar readings 2 hours after breakfast were always high, even though she ate oatmeal. When Eleanor came to me, she defended her juice. She said, "But Dr. Harris, it's natural. It comes from the earth." I explained to her that while the source was natural, the delivery method was too fast for her metabolism. By juicing 3 oranges, she was consuming the sugar of 3 fruits in 30 seconds, with none of the fiber. Her body couldn't keep up. We made a simple swap. I asked Eleanor to stop juicing and instead eat 1 whole orange with her breakfast. The physical act of peeling and chewing the orange took time. The white pith and the fibrous segments coated her stomach. She got the same vitamin C, but she consumed 1/3 of the sugar, and it entered her blood over an hour, not a minute. Her post-breakfast spike disappeared. Her energy levels stabilized because she wasn't crashing from a sugar high, and interestingly, she felt fuller. The juice had never satisfied her hunger, but the whole orange did. If you are dealing with blood sugar issues, do not drink your fruit. Eat it. The rule is simple. If you have to chew it, it is generally safer for your blood sugar. This applies to smoothies as well, which often pulverize the fiber so much that it loses its breaking ability. This is a small change that requires no medication, but it protects your liver and your blood vessels from that morning sugar flood. If you are finding these tips helpful, please comment below with your favorite whole fruit that doesn't spike your sugar. It gives others good ideas. This leads us to an external factor that many seniors ignore, but which dramatically affects both your pressure and your glucose. 10. Manage the temperature effect on your blood vessels. We often assume that our internal numbers are independent of the world outside, but as we age, our ability to regulate body temperature, thermoregulation, declines. We become more sensitive to heat and cold. This sensitivity has a direct mechanical impact on your blood pressure and consequently your blood sugar. When you are cold, your body's priority is to keep your core organs warm. To do this, it constricts your blood vessels, particularly in your arms and legs. This is called vasoconstriction. When the vessels narrow, the pressure inside them rises. It is like putting your thumb over the end of a garden hose. This cold-induced blood pressure spike does 2 things. First, it puts immediate stress on the heart. Second, as we discussed earlier, that increased pressure makes it harder for insulin to deliver sugar to your muscles. Your circulation is clamped down. Conversely, extreme heat can cause dehydration and vasodilation, which can lead to unpredictable drops in blood pressure and dizziness, or concentrated high sugar readings due to fluid loss. Frank's story is a perfect illustration of the winter trap. Frank was 82 and lived in a drafty older house. In the winter, to save on heating bills, he kept the thermostat low and wore a light sweater. He noticed that every winter, his blood pressure readings would creep up into the 150s and his blood sugar control would worsen. His doctor would often increase his dosage in January, only to have to lower it again in June. Frank thought his disease was seasonal. I asked Frank about his environment. He admitted his hands and feet were always freezing during the winter months. I explained to Frank that his body was in a constant state of low-grade thermal stress. His vessels were clamped shut to preserve heat, driving up his pressure and locking out the insulin. We didn't change his meds, we changed his environment. Frank started wearing thermal socks and layers indoors. He used a small space heater near his favorite chair. He kept his body warm. The result was physiological relief. His blood vessels relaxed. His blood pressure dropped by 10 points simply because he wasn't fighting the cold. Because his circulation improved, his insulin worked better, and his winter sugar spikes leveled off. For seniors, maintaining a neutral, comfortable body temperature is not just a luxury, it is a medical necessity. If you are sitting in a cold room and your hands are ice cold, your blood pressure reading will be falsely high, and your sugar metabolism will be sluggish. Before you take your blood pressure, make sure you are warm. If you have been outside in the cold, wait at least 20 minutes to warm up before testing. This ensures you are treating your actual health status, not just your body's reaction to the temperature. This supports steadier readings and prevents unnecessary medication increases during the colder months. Now, let's look at a silent source of inflammation that often keeps blood sugar high despite a perfect diet. 11. Address the silent infection in your mouth. This is a connection that is rarely discussed in general checkups, yet for seniors, it is a major driver of stubborn high blood sugar. I am talking about periodontal disease or gum disease. As we age, our gums naturally recede, and our mouths become drier, often due to medications. This creates the perfect environment for bacteria. You might not have a toothache, but you might have low-grade, chronic inflammation in your gums. When your gums are inflamed, your body's immune system is constantly fighting a battle. It releases inflammatory chemicals called cytokines into your bloodstream. These chemicals are like distress signals. They tell the body, "We are under attack." In response, your body becomes more insulin resistant. It is a defense mechanism. The body wants to keep sugar in the blood to fuel the immune system to fight the infection. So, if you have untreated gum disease, your blood sugar will be higher no matter how much broccoli you eat. Walter, a 70-year-old retired teacher, was baffled by his numbers. He was doing everything right, walking, eating low carb, sleeping well, yet his fasting glucose wouldn't drop below 120. He felt defeated. During a routine exam, I noticed his breath had a distinct odor and his gums looked red. I asked him when he last saw a dentist. He admitted it had been over 3 years because he had lost his dental insurance when he retired and didn't think it was important since his teeth didn't hurt. I strongly urged him to get a cleaning and a checkup. He went, and the dentist found significant gum disease and 2 low-grade infections under his molars. Walter got the deep cleaning he needed and took a course of antibiotics for the infection. 2 weeks later, Walter called me. He was ecstatic. His fasting blood sugar had dropped to 95. It wasn't the diet that had failed him. It was the hidden inflammation. Once the war in his mouth ended, his body stopped resisting insulin. For seniors, dental care is diabetes care. It is heart care. The bacteria from your mouth can enter your bloodstream and affect your heart valves and your metabolic system. If you are struggling with unexplained high blood sugar, look in the mirror. Are your gums red? Do they bleed when you brush? If so, the solution might be in the dentist's chair, not the pharmacy. Brush gently, floss daily, and if you have dry mouth from medications, use a moisturizing mouthwash. Keeping the bacteria count down lowers the inflammation load on your entire body. Here is an immediate lever you can use when you feel stress rising to prevent a spike before it happens. 12. Utilize slow breathing to hack your nervous system. We touched on stress earlier regarding sleep, but acute stress, the kind you feel when you are stuck in traffic or worried about a bill or even nervous about taking your blood pressure, causes an immediate release of adrenaline and glucose. Many seniors suffer from white coat syndrome, where their blood pressure spikes just because they are at the doctor's office or about to take a measurement. This creates a false record of high pressure, leading to over-medication. You have a built-in switch to turn off this adrenaline response. It is your breath. Most of us breathe shallowly into our chests. This signals alert mode to the brain. To signal safety mode, you need to breathe slowly and rhythmically. Maria, 66, was a nervous wreck every time she had to check her numbers. She would sit down, heart pounding, expecting the worst. Naturally, because she was stressed, her blood pressure would read 160/95, and her sugar would be elevated. She was creating the very result she feared. I taught Maria the 4-7-8 breathing technique. It is simple and safe for everyone. You breathe in quietly through your nose for a count of 4. You hold the breath for a count of 7. You exhale forcefully through your mouth, making a whooshing sound for a count of 8. I told Maria to do this 4 times before she even put the cuff on her arm. She tried it. The first time, she felt her shoulders drop. She felt her heart rate slow down. When she took her reading, it was 135/85, a massive drop just from breathing. By forcing her exhale to be longer than her inhale, she physically stimulated her vagus nerve. This nerve tells the heart to slow down and the blood vessels to relax. This isn't magic, it is biology. You are manually switching your nervous system from fight or flight to rest and digest. You can use this anytime. If you eat a meal and feel stressed, do the breathing. It helps digestion. If you are lying in bed and can't sleep, do the breathing. It lowers cortisol. It is a free, immediate tool that gives you control over your body's stress response. You don't need to be a yogi, you just need to count to 8. If you are currently taking blood pressure or sugar medication, this next point is a critical safety check regarding your nutrition. 13. Prioritize potassium to balance your sodium. We spend a lot of time telling seniors to cut salt. Low sodium is the mantra of every heart doctor. But reducing sodium is only half the equation. The other half is increasing potassium. Potassium is the mineral that counteracts sodium. Sodium holds water and tightens blood vessels. Potassium flushes water and relaxes blood vessels. They work in a seesaw balance. If you cut salt but your potassium is low, you still won't get the full benefit. However, and this is a major warning, many seniors mistakenly turn to high-sugar fruits like bananas to get their potassium. They have been told bananas are for potassium, so they eat 2 a day, spiking their blood sugar, all in the name of heart health. Linda, 73, was in this exact cycle. She suffered from leg cramps and high blood pressure. Her friends told her to eat bananas. So she did. Her cramps improved slightly, but her blood sugar skyrocketed. She was trading one problem for another. We sat down and looked for low-sugar potassium sources. The reality is that a banana is not even the best source of potassium. I directed Linda toward avocados, spinach, and salmon. Half an avocado has more potassium than a banana, with healthy fats and 0 sugar spike. A cup of cooked spinach is a potassium powerhouse. Linda started adding a side of spinach to her dinner and having half an avocado with her lunch. She stopped the bananas. The result was a beautiful synergy. Her potassium levels went up, which helped her kidneys flush out excess salt. Her blood pressure softened, and because she replaced a high-sugar fruit with fiber and healthy fat, her blood sugar stabilized. This is the micro-niche approach in action. You have to find the foods that help your blood pressure without hurting your blood sugar. A word of caution. If you have advanced kidney disease or are on certain medications like potassium-sparing diuretics, you must speak to your doctor before increasing potassium, as your kidneys might not be able to process it. But for most seniors with normal kidney function, getting potassium from greens and savory foods is a game changer. This supports a relaxed vascular system without the sugar penalty. 14. The medication timing safety check. Finally, we must discuss the timing of your medication in relation to your life. This is where the most dangerous falls happen. Many seniors take their blood sugar medication simply in the morning, because that is the routine, without coordinating it with their food intake. If you take a medication that stimulates insulin, like a sulfonylurea, or inject insulin, and then you get distracted, perhaps the phone rings, or you start a load of laundry, or you decide to take a shower before you eat, you are in the danger zone. The medication starts working to lower your sugar, but there is no food coming in to balance it. Your sugar drops rapidly. Thomas, 77, had a terrifying experience. He took his glipizide pill at 8 a.m. He intended to eat breakfast, but he decided to take a quick hot shower first. The hot water dilated his blood vessels, speeding up insulin absorption, and he hadn't eaten. He passed out in the shower. Thankfully, his son heard the thud and found him. His blood sugar was 45. This was not an overdose, it was a timing error. The rule for seniors is strict. If you take a medication that lowers blood sugar, the food must be ready to eat before you take the pill or the shot. Do not take the pill and then start cooking. Take the pill when the plate is on the table. We taught Thomas to put his pill bottle inside his cereal bowl. He literally couldn't eat without moving the bottle, reminding him to take it with the food. He never had a hypoglycemia event again. He matched the peak of the medication with the peak of digestion. Safety must always come first. Avoiding a fall is more important than a perfect number. Conclusion. We have covered an immense amount of ground, from redefining what a normal number is for your age, to the specific order of your meals, the temperature of your home, and the hidden inflammation in your gums. The overarching theme is this: your body at 60, 70, or 80 is not broken. It is simply different. It requires a strategy that respects its changes. You learned that you don't need to starve yourself to control your numbers. You can eat the foods you love if you change the order. Fiber and protein first, carbs last. You learned that you don't need to run marathons. 10 minutes of movement after a meal or gentle chair exercises build the glucose sinks you need. You learned that your environment, the cold winter air, the stress of a doctor's visit, or a bad night's sleep, affects your reading just as much as a piece of cake does. The goal of Dr. Ben Harris's channel is not to make you fearful of your physiology, but to make you the expert on it. When you understand why your pressure spikes in the cold, or why your sugar is high after a bad night's sleep, you stop panicking, you stop blaming yourself, you start pulling the right levers to fix it. Take one of these 14 items. Just one. Maybe it is drinking water before lunch. Maybe it is checking your gum health. Maybe it is the first bite rule. Try it for a week. Watch your numbers. See how you feel. Success creates momentum. Please, if you found value in this deep dive, share this video with a friend or family member. We are building a community of informed, empowered seniors who are taking control of their health safely. I'm Dr. Ben Harris. Thank you for giving me your time and your trust. I will see you in the next video.